Africa, Mama Africa. Oh, yeah. You make Africa great. Thank you, freedom. Thank you, Africa.
I challenged ECOWAS when they were trying to mobilize the military to go and fight Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Oh, we can have a coup. I said, help me understand something. France has had coups against these nations for centuries. When France is forcing these countries to deposit their bank reserves with France, that's a coup, an economic coup. President Tinubu, what have you done about this coup? You are sitting on the big boy chair now. Talk to me. What are you going to do about this coup? When France is making sure that all natural resources for these countries belong to France, that's a coup. What are you going to do about it, ECOWAS? These are coups. But somehow, we don't see them as coups because it's the white man doing it. If a black man was doing the same thing to another black man, oh, you know, they'll call them out in a heartbeat. We have a serious problem as Africans. We don't even realize how sick we are with this disease. We are not just sick at home. We are not just sick in the doctor's waiting room. We are not just sick in the general ward in the hospital. We are in the intensive care. It's deep. What's happening in Burkina Faso must be supported. What's happening in Mali must be supported. What's happening in Niger must be supported. If you care the least bit about our future, how else are we going to get France out of Africa? How else are we going to get Britain, Germany, all those former colonizers? They're now in as multinationals.
Yes, kings and queens, what happening in Burkina Faso must be supported. What happened in Mali, Niger must be supported. Those are just words from our mother, Dr. Arikana Chihombori-Quao, when addressed the audience in South Africa. So, kings and queens, I would like to invite you to watch this video. Of course, it's one of the powerful speech from our mother, Dr. Arikana Chihombori-Quao. Watch this video from the beginning until the end. Don't skip it. Please make sure that you watch from the beginning until the end. Welcome and listen and also watch this powerful speech from our mother, Ambassador Dr. Arikana Chihombori-Quao.
I challenged ECOWAS when they were trying to mobilize the military to go and fight Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Oh, we can have a coup. I said, help me understand something. France has had coups against these nations for centuries. When France is forcing these countries to deposit their bank reserves with France, that's a coup, an economic coup. President Tinubu, what have you done about this coup? You are sitting on the big boy chair now. Talk to me. What are you going to do about this coup? When France is making sure that all natural resources for these countries belong to France, that's a coup. What are you going to do about it, ECOWAS? These are coups. But somehow, we don't see them as coups because it's the white man doing it. If a black man was doing the same thing to another black man, oh, you know, they'll call them out in a heartbeat. We have a serious problem as Africans. We don't even realize how sick we are with this disease. We are not just sick at home. We are not just sick in the doctor's waiting room. We are not just sick in the general ward in the hospital. We are in the intensive care. It's deep. You see, as a doctor, I cannot help you unless you come to me with your complaints. At least recognize that you're sick. But most of the time, we don't even realize that we are sick. So where do we begin? This stupidity that is going on in Africa has got to come to an end. And you can't expect those who put us in positions of servitude to get us out. It's not going to happen. So the question is, when is the African going to wake up? The African is stupid in Africa. The African is stupid in America. The African is stupid in South America. The African is stupid in the Caribbean. Wherever you see us as black people, we do some of the most stupid things. You go into neighborhoods. In America, where I've spent most of my time, look at the Mexicans. They stick together like super glue when it comes to issues pertaining to their existence in the United States as Mexicans. The Irish, the Jews, the Chinese, the Indians ask for their voices loud and clear because they understand the importance of unity. They don't have to love each other, but they understand when it comes to issues pertaining to their sheer existence, they must stick together like super glue, and they do. But when you ask for the voices of black people, we scatter like mice. We don't believe in each other. I was in Dallas and one Zimbabwean, I was asking, are there a lot of Zimbabweans who are you? No, I don't talk to Zimbabweans. I'm the only black person in my neighborhood, and she was so proud of it. I'm speaking to another friend, this time in Zimbabwe. She was so proud that her son cannot speak Shona, and that the son speaks English like a British. And she's telling me this with a certain level of pride. And that's the mother, which means the child is just as doomed. When are we going to wake up and realize that our inability to move forward as a people is because we were defeated where it matters the most? I'm so glad we're sitting here in an institution of higher learning. I'm going to ask you to say, what are we going to do about the educational curriculum? Because that's where it begins. They don't want us knowing our history. They don't want us knowing where we came from. Because if you are a person without a history, who are you? Where do you come from? As Africans, we're too busy running away from who we are. We don't want to embrace our Africanness. Why not? If you refuse and don't accept your Africanness, then who are you? I tell the Africans when they try to act like they want to speak like an American, they want to lose their accent. You can never speak English like an American. Then you don't want to speak your own vernacular. Then who are you? You are just like a ship without an anchor. The wind blows that way, there you go. The wind blows that way, there you go. And there are too many of us who find themselves in that boat without an anchor. What's happening in Burkina Faso must be supported. What's happening in Mali must be supported. What's happening in Niger must be supported. If you care the least bit about our future, how else are we going to get France out of Africa? How else are we going to get Britain, Germany, all those former colonizers? They're now in as multinationals, siphoning billions out of Africa, using safe havens to hide their returns. We know they're here. They are now wolf in sheep's clothing. What is it going to take? If you look at the move that Niger made, by simply saying, France, you can no longer buy our uranium for 80 cents a kilo, when we know very well you're selling it for 200 euros per kilo. Niger was realizing about 1 billion out of the sales of its uranium a year, while France was realizing close to 300 billion. That one move alone, when Niger said, if you want our uranium, 200 euros a kilo, please. Immediately, 300 billion. 1 mineral. It's not going to take much to change Africa. We got what it takes. If there's one thing we're very fortunate of, we're endowed with everything the rest of the world needs. The truth of the matter is, we don't need the world. The world needs Africa. But do we really know that and believe in it and are ready to stand up and proclaim who we are? And let them know. But I've sat in meetings where I've seen ministers, America, can you help us with this? Europe, can you help us? Begging endlessly for something that we have. Whatever they are giving you is what they stole from us. And they are giving you peanuts. When are we going to stop being outsmarted by these people? They come smiling at you. They come to give you aid. You know very well that's your money. But we're so grateful. I once went to the World Bank. Oh, Ambassador, we have money for the African Union. Please, when the chairman comes. So the deputy chair came. And we went. They had $15 million for us. $15 million for the whole African Union. And here's the kicker. They were only going to give us 50% of that. And then when we can show them what we have done with the 7.5 million, then we can have the other 7.5. Blatantly insulting us. And I'm not supposed to say anything. I got my deputy chair, so I need to shut up. But I asked to go to the bathroom. And I called the chair. I said, could you please come down the hall? I said, let's not take that money. I don't know about you, but I feel highly and royally insulted. Treat you like a child. You don't know how to handle money. So we'll just give you 7.5 million. Let's see what you do with it. And then we may or may give you the rest. It's the same thing they're doing at the United Nations. When Africa is supposed to be at the UN Security Council as the 6th and 7th members of the UN Security Council. But you can't have veto power. So come on in, Africa. Oh, we got a kiddie chair over here for you. Sit over there, we got some cookies. Sit over there and be quiet while we take care of business. And we entertain them. Wow. What's wrong with us? What gives me hope is that we have a vibrant African youth who are saying enough is enough. We are not taking this anymore. This abuse has got to come to an end. The exploitation of the African continent has got to come to an end. The Berlin Conference must be dismantled. And for those of you who think Berlin Conference is a piece of history, guess what? It's a piece of legislation nicely designed over a period of 4 months to see to it that Africa and her children are forever defeated and dominated to this day. As long as there's a country called Malawi, as long as there's a country called Gabon with 1.5 million people, as long as there's a country called Eswatini, Berlin Conference is alive and well. And that's where we get defeated internationally through trade. Oh, you're all equal. You are a sovereign nation, Eswatini. You are a sovereign nation, Togo. You are a sovereign nation, Malawi. And every African country for that matter. So let's go to the market. You, Malawi, with your little basket, with 3 eggs, you're coming to the market. And here comes China with truckloads of eggs. I once was told that Zimbabwe thought, well, let's see if we can sell eggs to China. Let's supply some eggs. They're bringing stuff to us. Let's give them eggs. So I told the president, ask people to go do some research and see how much eggs we need to send to China. The report came back and said, Mr. President, the amount of eggs we produce the whole year, that's 1 breakfast in China. So you want Zimbabwe to go to the market with China and sell eggs? That's David and Goliath. And it was all by design. As long as we remain as the little-bitty economies that we are today, we are forever getting our rear ends kicked. The only way for Africa to survive is when we unite. A united Africa is a must, but it's going to take minds that are awoken, minds that understand the importance of unity, minds that are free of the legacy of colonization and the legacy of slavery. As we speak today, we're all sick from the disease. None of us is exempt. And that's a fact. I'm going to ask each and every one of you to have a serious conversation with the image in the mirror. And ask yourself why you feel the way you do. Why are you automatically afraid of those who don't look like you? Why do you feel defeated? Why are you afraid to speak up and stand your ground? Besides, you are the mothers and fathers of humanity. Without the black woman, without the black man, the rest of the world would not be. That's a fact. We civilized the world. They came to Africa and stole everything that they never had. Came back with what they stole from us and made us believe that they gave it to us. Timbuktu. Egypt. The Greeks, when they needed to be trained, where were they sent? To Egypt. Because it was already there. We're already doing it. But they want the history to start from here, so we don't talk about what happened before. My brothers and sisters, we are inheritors of an amazing continent. South Africa is an amazing country. We have people like Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, our very own president. People who suffered and sacrificed everything for this country to be free. Why are we trying to disrespect them and go back? South Africa should lead the way. Nigeria should lead the way. Kenya should lead the way. We have countries that should lead the way because they have what it takes to take Africa where Africa needs to be. But let me also add that the leaders cannot do it alone. I don't care what ideas President Zuma had. If we are not ready to implement those ideas and think he can do it as leadership alone, it's not going to work. I was discussing the issues of the quote-unquote coups in Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. One African said, but Ambassador, why do we have to do coups to change government? Why can't we just do like the Chinese do? I said, son, let me ask you one question. During the pandemic, the Chinese built a 10,000 square foot hospital bed in 1 week. Are you Africans ready to do that? The Chinese are willing to work non-stop to do what needs to be done for the sake of country, for the sake of nation. We're too greedy, too selfish to do that. I said, son, until you start having the mind of a Chinaman, you can never be like a Chinaman. We have some serious introspection to do. We have some serious thinking to do. We're not asking you to love each other. We simply understand. We want you to understand that while there is a certain level of camaraderie that exists in other races, there was a strategy put in place to make sure that we remain divided and conquered. Fear was intentionally instilled in us. So we will be forever fearful for nothing, but we're just afraid. There's another book I want to recommend to all of you. It's called The Making of a Slave, the Willie Lynch Letters. Willie Lynch was a slave owner from the Caribbean. He had come up with a way of training his slaves so they would remain submissive for generations to come. One of the ways was taking a black man, tie one leg on one horse facing that way, another leg on another horse facing that way, and he will hit the horses, and they would literally split the men apart. In front of his children, in front of his family, in front of other black people and other slaves. And he particularly wanted the pregnant women. Why? That would be passed on, that fear would be passed on to even the unborn child. So it is, over 400 years later, we almost underwent a genetic mutation of sheer stupidity. We were programmed to be afraid. We were programmed to almost be stupid and just do stupid things. The things that we tolerate, no man in any other country would tolerate. But we do. It's going to take all of you. The students, you are our future. We're counting on you. We're a lost cause. I feel encouraged when we have young people like our moderator. Young people who are awoken, young people who are saying we can no longer continue to be lied to anymore. We know the truth. Is South Africa ready? Is South Africa ready to lead the way, to stand up and say enough is enough? That we can no longer continue to be exploited. We can no longer continue to be treated as second-class citizens in our own land. The future is bright. If only we could understand that the power is in our hands. Yes, leadership has a lot of role to play, but we have a bigger role to play as citizens. Let's believe in ourselves. Let's stand up for what's right. Let's let the world know that we are the inheritors of the most amazing continent. But they can no longer continue to to allow our resources, our inheritance, to fund the educational systems in their countries, to fund the healthcare systems in their countries, to fund the infrastructure development in their countries, while we are languishing in poverty. And they have the audacity to tell us that we're poor people. How dare they? Let me conclude by reading 3 quotes. The first one is from former President Jomo Kenyatta. He said, when missionaries arrived, the Africans had the land and the missionaries had the Bible. They taught us how to pray with our eyes closed. When we opened them, they had the land and we had the Bible. The next quote is from Marcus Garvey. He said, a people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. And finally, Patrice Lumumba said, the day will come when history will speak. Africa will write its own history. It will be a history of glory and dignity. The time is now. There is no turning back. Africa, wake up. The issues of justice, equality, we understand them. Our ask as Africans is a simple one. We're simply asking that the world treats us the same way they would want to be treated. We are demanding a world that is just, a world that is fair, a world that is free of bigotry and hate. We're not asking the world to do anything that they would not want done unto them. So our ask is a very simple one. I need each and every one of you, after you've had a serious conversation with the image in the mirror, to stand up on top of the tallest mountain, look in the mirror, and tell the world that we are the proud, the beautiful, the intelligent, sophisticated, highly adaptable, and totally indestructible Africans. My name is Arikana Chihombori, a proud mother of 5 and a grandmother of 7 and 2 on the way. Today, we spent an afternoon at Robben Island. And as we were walking around, I had a bottle of water in my hands. And my sister, Honorable Minister Sisulu, leaned over to me and she said, take it easy on that water. We don't have female facilities at Robben Island. I said, what? 2024, 30 years since independence, there are no female facilities at Robben Island. What gives? Her comments reminded me, for when I went to Ghana, speaking at the University of Cape Coast, I stayed at a beautiful hotel. When I walked into the room, right above the headboard was a humongous photograph of Queen Elizabeth. And I thought to myself, now I am going to go to bed tonight with the shadow of Queen Elizabeth hanging over me. What kind of dreams was I going to have that night? I nicely found time. I called my VP and I said, could you help me take this photograph down? We shall put it back tomorrow morning, because tonight I intend to have good dreams. And I wondered why, since I was in Ghana, what kind of dreams I would have had had I spent the night with the shadow of Nanaya Asandwa hanging over my head. I also wondered, why is it that in 2024, we still have the photograph of Queen Elizabeth hanging over the walls of hotels in Ghana, and not a single photograph of a king or a chief from Ghana? So it is the following morning, I opened my speech by simply wondering, why is it that the photograph of Nanaya Asantwa wasn't hanging in that room, and that the manager of the hotel was a friend, and that we were going to have a conversation. Some little bird sent a little message. By the time I got to my room, there was a picture of a queen, a Ghanaian queen, hanging over my head. In 1963, our Pan-African fathers, at the invitation of Emperor Haile Selassie, met in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to discuss the building of an Africa that spoke with one voice, the building of an Africa that was united, the building of an Africa that had a single currency, a single monetary policy, a single military, an Africa that should be, an Africa that was once upon a time. Unfortunately, when they met in 1963, NATO was in full force. NATO heard about the meeting that was getting to be revolutionary, a meeting that was going to undo the Berlin Conference, a meeting that was going to put an end to the exploitation of the African continent. That meeting had to be disrupted. So it is when our Pan-African fathers went to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, we had the Casablanca group, which was Ghana, Guinea, Mali, Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, and Algeria. They said Africa for the Africans and African Union now. The other 33 members, having tasted power, they were the Monrovia group. They said, no, let's wait on this African unity thing. Let's go slow. They were the majority. So the Casablanca group lost. Year in, year out, the African leaders would meet. The issue of an Africa that spoke with one voice was tabled, and year in and year out, that conversation was passed to next year. Fast forward 2024, we are still going slow at the African Union. The question is, our leadership is fully aware of the pillars of development. Our leaders are fully aware of the enemies to Africa's development. And yet somehow they're incapable of addressing them. We know when it comes to West Africa, the document that African countries were made to sign as they attained their quote-unquote independence, the document that's labeled the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. On one hand, we are giving you your independence, but on the other hand, we want you to sign this document, agreeing to continue to be colonized. And if you choose not to sign this document, in my pocket, I have a gun that has your name. So it is that Guinea and Mali, they chose not to sign the document. History tells us that France moved into those countries, poured concrete into the sewage pipes, destroyed schools, hospitals, roads. Anything that could be destroyed, they destroyed. Anything that they could pick up and take back with them to France, they took. According to President Mugabe, they even took the last pencil. This was done as a way of letting the other African countries know that should you refuse to sign this document, this was the fate that awaited you. Further down, we have more countries that tried to say, wait a minute, the pact for the continuation of colonization is something that's not sustainable. You have to give up 85% at that time of your bank reserves, deposit them with France. Those funds, once gone, they're not coming back. All your minerals discovered and yet to be discovered belong to France, and French companies had the first right of refusal. Your language of instruction shall be French. Your military can only be equipped by France. Your military can only be trained by France. Now, give me a break here. Imagine you are the president of a West African country under French control, and your chief of staff comes to you on your first day in office and says, Mr. President, before you resume your duties, I have some information to share with you. You must give up control of your finances. You must give up control of your natural resources. You must give up control of your military. Now, if you stay away from those, you are free to run your country as you wish. What kind of a country are you running? What kind of a leader are you? And I'm going to bring that question to you. To this day, those African countries are still required to deposit their bank reserves with France. Now, the numbers have gone down some. They're down to the 50, 55, 60. But by and large, with the exception of Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali that said, France, pack your bags and go home. The rest of the African countries are still subjected and held to the pact for the continuation of colonization. There are many other pacts and treaties that African countries were forced to sign that are still in place today. So enemy number one is the existence of pacts and treaties that we know they go against the development of Africa. But our leaders, for various reasons, and we know those who have tried to pull away, they've either been assassinated or exiled. So the realities are there, that if African leaders try to push back, there's some serious consequences. In spite of all that, there are some other issues that they also could deal with. We know the NGOs are nothing but wolf in sheep's clothing as they come into our countries. A lot of embassies as well. We have a few nice embassies. But we have many countries that are also just here to make sure that they continue to destabilize the countries. They make sure that the elections are forever interrupted, so they can continue to further their agendas within those respective countries. But also, there are things that we can do something about. You take, for example, our educational system. Why is it that we are still using colonial textbooks? What is keeping the Minister of Education from changing the curriculum? Nothing. Except just maybe the Minister of Education feels that the more they study European history, the more affluent they're supposed to be. Why is it that we are all fully aware that the loans that are being given to African countries, the loans that have been given to African countries for centuries, are frivolous loans that have been paid 1,000,000 times over? We also know very well, for those of you who have not read this book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, if you have not read that book, I urge you to read it. This is a former CIA who was himself an economic hitman, who in his older years, he says, the evils, the crimes that I've committed, I cannot lie down in my grave. So he speaks truth to power. He's talking about what he did, the games they played to force African countries to get loans to build a dam that should cost, for discussion purposes, 100 million. But he was encouraged to come up with figures to make that dam cost $1 billion. Ridiculous amounts. And then World Bank would come in and offer to fund that. And the rest of the money is pocketed. Now the country is stuck with $1 billion loan for something that should have cost 100 million. I encourage all of you to read that book, so you see the games that are being played. Now we know all that. Then why is it that our ministers of finance every year, twice a year, they go to the World Bank? They know what's going on, but they say nothing. What is keeping us as Africans from coming together and speaking with one voice and letting the World Bank know, and the IMF, that we have paid for these loans a gazillion times over? We aren't paying for them no more. What are they going to do? If Africa stood together and said this wrong must be righted, what are we afraid of? Why can't we just say it like it is? It is damn wrong. And it cannot continue. But we're afraid. You see, they defeated us where it matters the most. That even things that we have the ability to change, we are afraid of changing them. You see, when the Europeans first came to Africa, they brought us religion. We went to school. They taught us about the colors: orange, yellow, green, white. And then we went to church. And they taught us about a human being called Jesus Christ. And they talked about the angels, and they talked about who are in heaven, a place we all want to go to. They're beautiful, they're angelic, they're desirable. And oh, by the way, they're white. And oh, by the way, we are white, like the angels. But remember, in school, they told us this was white. But never mind how we look. We may look rather pinkish, but don't disregard that. We are white believers. Then they turned around and said there's something called hell. And there's a devil there. A mean creature, ugly, undesirable, does all the horrible things, and that creature is black. And oh, by the way, you too are black. Never mind this black color that we told you in school. And so it is. A blatant lie was told to us, and we have never stood up to say that's a damn lie. I'm not black. They're not white. But never mind. You look like the devil because we told you so. We look like the angels because we told you so. So it is when a little 5-year-old black boy is given 2 sets of dolls, black dolls and white dolls, and he's asked which one is mean. He points at the black one. He's asked which one is ugly, he points at the black one. He's asked which one is nice, he points at the white one. Which one is beautiful, he points at the white one. And then when asked which one is more like you, he sheepishly points at the black one. The 5-year-old boy is defeated before his life even begins. I can tell you there is no self-respecting mother, father, uncle, aunt who sat this little boy down and said, you are black and you are ugly. But somehow, there are subliminal messages that this boy just knows it. Think about it. So that same little boy who grew up to be the Minister of Education, he's not going to like anything to do with him. So yes, European history is what weighs out. African history? No. It is the same reasoning when I was asked to be a keynote speaker at the National Conference of African Educators. And what I learned that day was that African educators, you African educators, you don't read your own work in order to be tenured. Many professors, to be tenured, they gotta write 10, 20, 30, 40 papers. And those papers can only be reviewed in Europe, in the United States, by credible universities. So I said to the professors, you don't trust each other? You are not credible? If you can't trust each other, why should we parents trust you with our children? To this day, unless things have recently changed, to be tenured in universities in Africa, your work has to be reviewed outside Africa. What's wrong with having universities in North Africa send their work to Southern Africa? Universities in West Africa send their work to East Africa. But no, black professors are going to be reviewing it. It's not acceptable. They won't have the same weight. Do you realize how sad and painful that is? To this day. And the professors are right here, so I'm going to go after you. Because this stupidity has got to come to an end. It is filtering through to everything that we are doing. I am telling you, my brothers and sisters, we are the laughing stock of the world. They know what they're doing to us is wrong. I was a speaker at one conference of journalists. And I asked, I said, why do you guys lie about Africa? Why do you publish stories that are blatantly wrong and you know it? And I still remember it was a journalist from CNN. He says, nobody challenges us. It's just that simple. Nobody challenges us. I can tell you, the current US ambassador to the United Nations, and I'm going to call her out. She was fired by President Trump when I was going to Washington. She used to come to my office, and she would say, Ambassador, talk to the ambassadors. They need to speak up. When she was the former Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, she said, Ambassador, I'll be sitting on this side with the American side, and there'll be the Africans over there. She said, if they could just say some obvious things that would help her come back and make decisions and recommend certain changes. But the Africans don't speak. She said, tell these ambassadors to speak up. Why are we afraid? Because we were defeated where it matters the most, the mind. So no matter how hard we try to change our Africa, until we heal from the legacy of colonization, nothing we try to do is going to succeed. if we don't heal from the legacy of colonization, we will continue to be used as instruments of our own self-destruction. Who are we as Africans? What do we stand for? Viva Africa! Viva Africa! Viva! A luta continua. Why is it that we are here in Ghana? There is a military base here that American soldiers can walk in. No passport, no ID. They walk right through. If they commit crimes, they rape women, they kill women. No policeman in Ghana can touch them. Why? Where is the Ghanaian military base in the United States? Where is the French military base? Where is the Burkina Faso military base in France? Where is the Nigerian military base in Russia? Every superpower is building bases throughout Africa. Where are the African military bases in those countries? As I say some of these things, it's almost like it's a joke. So we need more Traorés in Africa.
Hello, welcome all kings and queens, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters in the continent, and to those who are in the diaspora. I have brought you an epic, powerful and revolutionary speech from Mama Africa, Her Excellence Ambassador Dr. Arikana Chihombori-Quao. Please watch the video till the end without skipping. Also, share this message to other Africans in the globe, and as much as we can, so that all of us we can hear this message from Mama Africa, Ambassador Dr. Arikana Chihombori-Quao. Welcome.
I like Nigeria, you know. Nigeria said when the US government increased their visa to $250 to get a visa to go to the United States, Nigeria said, no worries, you also have to pay $250 if your people want a visa. But turn around and go to Namibia, I was shocked. Namibians pay about $170 to get a visa to go to the United States, but Americans, when they go to Namibia, nothing, zero, not a penny. Just come. Now guys, let's have a serious conversation here. Who is stupid? Whose problem is it? We are the problem. What is leadership doing? Leadership is doing nothing. Leadership is voting on sheer stupidity. Stupidity that is causing us havoc. The same people who are abusing us, taking advantage of us, exploiting us, they are laughing at us because we are jokers. What are we doing in our parliaments? And that is why you see what's happening in Burkina Faso, what's happening in Niger, what's happening in Mali. The youth are saying, now we know. Now our eyes are open. Now we know who the real problem is. Yes, we know the enemy as the former colonizers. We know the enemy as the multinationals who are in our countries, siphoning as much as they can. Yes, we know the NGOs are nothing but wolf in sheep's clothing. Yes, we know some of the embassies are no good. They are there to make sure that the instability in our countries continue. We know all that. However, we also know that our leaders could stop it. So yes, it is that the youth are rising. The youth are saying, you leaders, if you do not do the right thing, we will replace you. So we need more Traorés in Africa. What's happening in Burkina Faso must be supported. What's happening in Niger must be supported. What's happening in Mali must be supported. The youth of Africa are sick and tired of being sick and tired. The issues of the root must be addressed. World Bank must stop giving us frivolous loans. World Bank must treat Africa fairly. Ours is a simple ask. We are simply saying to the world, we demand treated fairly, an Africa that can be treated as equals on the world stage, an Africa that is free of racism, bigotry, and hate. Our ask is a simple one. Our position is of stating the facts, stating the truth, constants that do not change. We're simply asking that the world does unto us what they would want done unto them. Anybody that has an issue that Africa has taken is somebody who is under earth. We want a peaceful world. We want a world that is just. And that is all we're asking. That is all our children are asking. Our children are saying we're tired of watching our uranium power 2/3 of France while they call us a dark continent. Our children are saying we're sick and tired of seeing our mineral wealth fund Western education while we don't have quality education in Africa. Our children are saying we're sick and tired of seeing our natural resources fund healthcare in the Western world while we don't have access to that Western world. So it is the revolution that has been proclaimed, the revolution the likes of Kwame Nkrumah and others had hoped for. While it may have taken us years to get where we are, the unfinished business that our Pan-African fathers started back in 1963 must be completed, and our youth in Africa are acutely aware of that. The leadership that is not awakening, the leadership that doesn't understand that imperialism no longer has room in Africa, neocolonialism no longer has room in Africa, colonization no longer has room in Africa, exploitation of Africa can no longer continue. A leader who doesn't understand that is a leader whose days are numbered. The African youth are not taking it anymore. The African youth are awakened, their eyes are open, and they're saying, you either stand up and defend what belongs to us, or we will replace you, plain and simple. The unfinished business that our Pan-African fathers, the unfinished business that Kwame Nkrumah and many others started, it must be completed, it must be finished. You and I, we have a responsibility. Youth, make us accountable as your elders. Make your leadership accountable. If your leadership is not accountable, replace them. I thank you. As I was getting ready for today's lecture, I came across a quotation from the man we are honoring today, His Excellency Kwame Nkrumah. He said, a state in the grip of neocolonialism is not master of its own destiny. It is this factor which makes neocolonialism such a serious threat to world peace. Following him, there was Marcus Garvey prior to him. He said, a people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. Jomo Kenyatta also reminded us that when the missionaries arrived in Africa, the Africans had the land and the missionaries had the Bible. They taught us how to pray with our eyes closed. When we opened our eyes, they had the land and we had the Bible. Finally, Patrice Lumumba said, the day will come when history will speak. Africa will write its own history. It will be a history of glory and dignity. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment. It was 3:10 a.m. as I was fast asleep in my bed in Tennessee when my phone rang. On the other end, there was a woman by the name of Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. She was the then chairman of the African Union. She proceeded to inform me that the then ambassador to the United States, the African Union ambassador to the United States, had just turned in her resignation and that she was going to be running for president of her country. A wonderful thing indeed. What was surprising, however, was that she wanted me to be the next African Union ambassador to the United States. Keep in mind, I am 1,000% scientist with zero experience or knowledge of diplomacy or even politics. I left Zimbabwe as a teenager to go to the university in the United States, had a degree in general chemistry, a master's in organic chemistry, went on straight to medical school, did a residency in general surgery and another one in family medicine, and went on straight to practice medicine for 25 years. Nothing to do with diplomacy in any way, shape, or form. So to my surprise, I said, Madam Chair, why on earth would you want somebody like myself to go to Washington, D.C. and be an ambassador? She said, well, look at me. I'm a pediatrician. I said, but you went to South Africa. You took positions that took you through the ranks of where you are now. I have no experience and you just want to throw me into the wolves. She said, no, we're tired of getting our rear ends kicked and we need somebody who understands the Americans. I said, I do understand the, you think so? She said, yes, you do. It took me 6 months of back and forth with her until finally I said, you know what? The joke is on you. I'm going to go to Washington. I'm going to have fun. I had not taken sabbatical since coming to the United States. I'm going to drink tea and be wined and dined, and after 6 months, I'm going to look at her and say, Madam, I tried, but I couldn't do it. So that was the plan. I actually did not look for an apartment. I stayed in a hotel for 5 months. I would go into the meetings and I would sit and I would be laughing at myself to say, what on earth are you doing in Washington, D.C., pretending to be a diplomat? What I ended up doing is sitting in the meeting rooms, and as a medical doctor, naturally, I'm making diagnosis. Oh, you got a goiter, I need to see you. Oh, you got bipolar, I got a pill for you. I'm making diagnosis of the congressmen and other politicians and ambassadors that were in the room because I did not think I could contribute to anything that was really going on. But from time to time, a comment would be made that would make me wake up and say, did I just hear that? Was that not an insult to us? Did that individual actually just abuse us? And I'm in the room with seasoned ambassadors. Ambassadors with years of experience. I'm waiting for one of them to say something. To my surprise, nothing was said. So the first month, I'm the new kid on the block. I'm just a medical doctor here. I just don't know what's going on here. I'm watching and I'm listening. And slowly I begin to realize there was something wrong going on. Why is it that we are not speaking up as ambassadors? We are here to represent 1.4 billion people who need our voices. Why are we mute? Well, you know, having been born and raised in Zimbabwe during apartheid, we fought. I was a young teenager when I saw many of my colleagues leave and join the revolution, and many died. So when it comes to fighting, I was prepared. I got to where I got so sick and tired of attending these meetings because I was sick and tired of the abuse. I attended meetings on the African continent and the abuse continued, and the mutinous from us also continued until one day I said, enough is enough. I'm an African woman and I have been given a platform and I have a mandate. I shall exercise my mandate. You see, as a medical doctor, every day you're faced with people that come to you. Sometimes patients understand what's wrong with them. Sometimes they don't. We have a responsibility to help people figure out what's going on with them, organize their lives, make a diagnosis, give it a name, and help them deal with it. And in my stay in Washington, D.C., early on, I made a diagnosis that which was ailing was our ignorance and understanding of what was really going on, our fear of those who don't look like us, and the fact that we have been lied to, we have been miseducated, we have been misinformed. That had to change. So it is, I sought out to execute my mandate, which included, in addition to engaging the US government, it also included mobilizing the African diaspora to participate in the development of Africa. How could the diaspora participate in the development of Africa if they are ignorant about what is happening in Africa? So I started speaking to them. I summarized it in a very simple matter, that we have a responsibility to finish the unfinished business that was started by our Pan-African fathers back in 1963 when they met in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Sadly, when our ancestors, our Pan-African fathers went to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, they were divided. We had the Casablanca group, which was led by Kwame Nkrumah. It was Ghana, Guinea, Mali, Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia. They were the Casablanca group that said Africa for the Africans and African Union now. They wanted change. They understood the importance of unity. They knew for Africa to move forward, Africa must speak with one voice. They demanded an Africa with one customs union, an Africa with one central bank, an Africa with one military, an Africa that was truly integrated, because it is only that Africa that's going to deliver true African liberation, economically, politically, and otherwise. Failure to accomplish that is a defeat for the African people. There were only 7. The majority were the Monrovia group. There were 35. They said, let's kind of hold off on this unity thing. You see, they had tasted a little bit of this superficial, fake independence. Let's kind of go slow. 2024. We're still going slow. The Monrovia group were the majority, they won. We often say, Africa lost in 1963 when the Casablanca group succeeded at thwarting that which the Casablanca wanted. The Monrovia group failed us. Year in, year out, the African leaders would meet. The issue of an Africa that spoke with one voice was tabled, and year in and year out, NATO nations were in full force to see to it that the African leaders do not vote for an Africa that spoke with one voice. Not always they remain in full force to make sure that Africa never gets to be united. We have failed Africa. Our leadership has failed Africa. Allow me to describe what I call the African tree of life. A tree of life that once upon a time thriving, it gave the most luscious fruits, beautiful flowers. A tree that everybody counted on, a tree that fed the African people. Something happened. The flowers don't bloom as beautiful as they used to be. The branches keep falling off. The leaves are never as green and luscious as they should be. So they, through the media, mainstream media, through the NGOs who come in sheep's clothing, we know they are wolves, through the embassies throughout Africa, they have made you believe that it's your problem. See, these fruits are not doing like they should. It's because it's your problem. Focus on the fruits, focus on the leaves, focus on the branches. They don't want you to focus on the root. You see, if you don't address the issues of the root, you will forever be talking about the flowers, the branches and the leaves of this tree, year in and year out. And that's what we have been taught to believe. On top of that, while they continue to lie to us, while they continue to throw us a shiny object and want us to focus on frivolous things that do not address the root, don't forget, the biggest defeat was the mind. When they made us believe that white was bad, black is bad, you are like the devil, you represent the devil, your color is bad, and you must denounce even yourself. And when you are denouncing yourself, you must praise them. Even though we know very well that their skin is a mutation of the original, which is you. The original DNA. Anybody else that does not look black is a mutation of the original thing. They made you forget that. They made you forget that. So you see, they set the stage. They've been lying to us for years, for centuries. They even taught you to hate yourself. So let's go to the bottom, to the root of why the African tree is ailing. They started with the mind. And until you realize that as a black person, you're suffering from the legacy of colonization, until you realize as a black person, you're suffering from the legacy of slavery, nothing, and I mean nothing you do is going and feathers of humanity. One who must stand on top of the tallest mountain and proclaim to the world who you are. Why are you failing to do so? Because you've been put asleep. You have been lied to. And it is only you who can make that change. It is only you who can look in the mirror and say, I am beautiful. I am the mother of humanity. I am the father of humanity. What will it take, my brothers and sisters, for you to understand that basic fact? And until you do, your ability to change Africa is going to fail. Tell me why. That we are all very much aware that the World Bank and IMF are using the rating agencies. I'm now talking about the issues of the root. They are using rating agencies to label African governments and give them poor ratings so the World Bank can justify giving frivolous interest rates to African governments. Today, as we speak, the average African country is paying way over 50% of their GDP on loan repayments to the World Bank. Loans that we all know very well, they have been paid a gazillion times over. And yet, twice a year, our ministers of finance, they go to Washington to attend the World Bank meetings. They say nothing. They know this is happening. Mr. Minister, Honorable Minister, what on earth are you doing? All of you collectively, why can't you go to the World Bank and say, enough is enough, we are no longer paying for these loans? And you know why they're not doing it? They're scared. They're scared for those who don't look like them. They know the truth, but they just can't speak up. It goes back to the mind. Let's take another issue of the root. And all of it you will find that what underscores our inability to deal with these issues, it goes back to the mind. I'm going to keep underscoring the mind, because all we gotta do is stand up. As we speak, the remains of our ancestors are sitting in jars in basements throughout Europe. Why is it that our ministers of culture, they continue to go to Europe, they visit with these governments, when they are sitting in those meeting rooms, in those basements, the remains of your ancestors are sitting in jars and you say nothing? What is wrong with this picture? What is wrong with us Africans? How long do you think a family of a British soldier lost in Ghana? Not even a minute. They would storm into Ghana, kill thousands of people just to recover that little finger. But when it comes to us, it's okay, Massa. How long? Why are these ministers not able to speak up? Why are these ministers saying, no, when you invite us to France, when you invite us to Britain, when you invite us to all of those former colonies that are hiding our artifacts which they stole, that are hiding the remains of our ancestors, we are not coming until this wrong is righted, plain and simple. Why can't we do it? It goes back to the mind. We're still talking about the issues of the root. Have you ever wondered, when we go to the World Trade Organization, we know Ghana, the best cocoa in the world, comes from West Africa. It's only the past few years that Ghana was allowed to add value to the cocoa. Prior to that, if Ghana had said we wanted to add value to our own cocoa products, tariffs would be slapped on those value-added products that it wasn't even worth the value addition. What are our ministers of trade doing about that? The World Trade Organization, an organization that's giving a blind eye to the biggest abuses of the African continent. Ghana cocoa is being mislabeled. Tell me, you travel throughout Europe, every hotel you go to is Swiss cocoa, Swiss chocolate, Swiss this, Swiss that. Show me 1 acre of cocoa in Switzerland. And yet nobody says anything about it. I kind of like the Nigerian guy who walked into a museum in Britain. There was a humongous bronze statue that was in the entrance. And the man brought his tools. I don't know if some of you heard about him. He brought his tools into the museum and he started unscrewing the statue. And when they come to say, what are you doing? He says, this is mine, it's stolen product. I am from Benin. This is Benin bronze. It belongs to me. He created a scene, but he made a point. Because he said, if my ministers cannot do it, I will. Are we stupid or what? As I say some of these things, it's almost like it's a joke. It's like it's a cartoon movie. It's a comedy show. But unfortunately, this is our reality. Why is it that we are not capable of fighting back? East Africa, the best teas, products out of Africa are taken into Europe and relabeled, and we know it. When I was in Washington, I would talk to my colleagues. I'd made a lot of friends. I said, but why do you abuse the Africans like this? I attended a conference where they had journalists from all the major medias. And I asked the question, I said, why do you report lies about Africa? Why do you tell falsehoods? And one journalist from CNN said it very nicely. He said, Ambassador, we say it because nobody challenges us. It's that simple, my brothers and sisters. We say it because nobody challenges us. And he said, if somebody challenged us, we would stop. But you Africans don't.
Thank you, Africa. Mama Africa. Oh, yeah. You make African great. Thank you, Africa. Thank you, Africa.
I challenged ECOWAS when they were trying to mobilize a military to go and fight Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Oh, we can have a coup. I said, help me understand something. France has had coups against these nations for centuries. When France is forcing these countries to deposit their bank reserves with France, that's a coup, an economic coup. President Tinubu, what have you done about this coup? You are sitting on the big boy chair now. Talk to me. What are you going to do about this coup? When France is making sure that all natural resources for these countries belong to France, that's a coup. What are you going to do about it, ECOWAS? These are coups. But somehow, we don't see them as coups because it's the white men doing it. If a black man was doing the same thing to another black man, oh, you know, they'll call them out in a heartbeat. We have a serious problem as Africans. We don't even realize how sick we are with this disease. We are not just sick at home. We are not just sick in the doctor's waiting room. We are not just sick in the general ward in the hospital. We are in the intensive care. It's deep. What's happening in Burkina Faso must be supported. What's happening in Mali must be supported. What's happening in Niger must be supported. If you care the least bit about our future, how else are we going to get France out of Africa? How else are we going to get Britain, Germany, all those former colonizers? They're now in as multinationals.
Yes, kings and queens, what happening in Burkina Faso must be supported. What happened in Mali, Niger must be supported. Those are just words from our mother, Dr. Arikana Chihombori-Quao, when addressed the audience in South Africa. So, kings and queens, I would like to invite you to watch this video. Of course, it is one of the powerful speech from our mother, Dr. Arikana Chihombori-Quao. Watch this video from the beginning until the end. Don't skip it. Please make sure that you watch from the beginning until the end. Welcome and listen, and also watch this powerful speech from our mother, Ambassador Dr. Arikana Chihombori-Quao.
I challenged ECOWAS when they were trying to mobilize the military to go and fight Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Oh, we can have a coup. I said, help me understand something. France has had coups against these nations for centuries. When France is forcing these countries to deposit their bank reserves with France, that's a coup, an economic coup. President Tinubu, what have you done about this coup? You are sitting on the big boy chair now. Talk to me. What are you going to do about this coup? When France is making sure that all natural resources for these countries belong to France, that's a coup. What are you going to do about it, ECOWAS? These are coups. But somehow, we don't see them as coups because it's the white men doing it. If a black man was doing the same thing to another black man, oh, you know, they'll call them out in a heartbeat. We have a serious problem as Africans. We don't even realize how sick we are with this disease. We are not just sick at home. We are not just sick in the doctor's waiting room. We are not just sick in the general ward in the hospital. We are in the intensive care. It's deep. You see, as a doctor, I cannot help you unless you come to me with your complaints. At least recognize that you're sick. But most of the time, we don't even realize that we are sick. So where do we begin? This stupidity that is going on in Africa has got to come to an end. And you can't expect those who put us in positions of servitude to get us out. It's not going to happen. So the question is, when is the African going to wake up? The African is stupid in Africa. The African is stupid in America. The African is stupid in South America. The African is stupid in the Caribbean. Wherever you see us as black people, we do some of the most stupid things. You go into neighborhoods. In America, where I've spent most of my time, look at the Mexicans. They stick together like super glue when it comes to issues pertaining to their existence in the United States as Mexicans. The Irish, the Jews, the Chinese, the Indians ask for their voices loud and clear because they understand the importance of unity. They don't have to love each other, but they understand when it comes to issues pertaining to their sheer existence, they must stick together like super glue, and they do. But when we ask for the voices of black people, we scatter like mice. We don't believe in each other. I was in Dallas and one Zimbabwean, I was asking, are there a lot of Zimbabweans where you live? No, I don't talk to Zimbabweans. I'm the only black person in my neighborhood, and she was so proud of it. I'm speaking to another friend, this time in Zimbabwe. She was so proud that her son cannot speak Shona, and that the son speaks English like a British. And she's telling me this with a certain level of pride. And that's the mother, which means the child is just as doomed. When are we going to wake up and realize that our inability to move forward as a people is because we were defeated where it matters the most? I'm so glad we're sitting here in an institution of higher learning. I'm going to ask you to say, what are we going to do about the educational curriculum? Because that's where it begins. They don't want us knowing our history. They don't want us knowing where we came from. Because if you are a person without a history, who are you? Where do you come from? As Africans, we are too busy running away from who we are. We don't want to embrace our Africanness. Why not? If you refuse and don't accept your Africanness, then who are you? I tell the Africans when they try to act like they want to speak like an American, they want to lose their accent. You can never speak English like an American. Then you don't want to speak your own vernacular. Then who are you? You are just like a ship without an anchor. The wind blows that way, there you go. The wind blows that way, there you go. And there are too many of us who find themselves in that boat without an anchor. What's happening in Burkina Faso must be supported. What's happening in Mali must be supported. What's happening in Niger must be supported. If you care the least bit about our future, how else are we going to get France out of Africa? How else are we going to get Britain, Germany, all those former colonizers? They're now in as multinationals, siphoning billions out of Africa, using safe havens to hide their returns. We know they're here. They are now wolf in sheep's clothing. What is it going to take? If you look at the move that Niger made, by simply saying, France, you can no longer buy our uranium for 80 cents a kilo, when we know very well you're selling it for 200 euros per kilo. Niger was realizing about 1 billion out of the sales of its uranium a year, while France was realizing close to 300 billion. That one move alone, when Niger said, if you want our uranium, 200 euros a kilo, please. Immediately, 300 billion. 1 mineral. It's not going to take much to change Africa. We got what it takes. If there's one thing we're very fortunate of, we're endowed with everything the rest of the world needs. The truth of the matter is, we don't need the world. The world needs Africa. But do we really know that and believe in it and are ready to stand up and proclaim who we are? And let them know. But I've sat in meetings where I've seen ministers, America, can you help us with this? Europe, can you help us? Begging endlessly for something that we have. Whatever they are giving you is what they stole from us. And they are giving you peanuts. When are we going to stop being outsmarted by these people? They come smiling at you. They come to give you aid. You know very well that's your money.
Again organized.
But we're so
purposes of rebuilding
I once went to the World Bank.
From its
Ambassador, we have money for the African Union. Please,
so it is in
when
4
the chairman
weeks.
comes.
A few nations came up with
and we went.
what we know
They had
as
$50
United
million
Nations.
for us.
That was in 1945.
For the whole
These
African
institutions
And here's the kicker.
The United
They were
Nations,
only going to give us 50% of that.
Organization is
And then when we can show them what we have done with the 7.5 million, then we can have the other 7.5. Blatantly insulting us. And I'm not supposed to say anything. I got my deputy chair, so I need to shut up. But I asked to go to the bathroom. And I called the chair. I said, could you please come down the hall? I said, let's not take that money. I don't know about you, but I feel highly and royally insulted. Treat you like a child. You don't know how to handle money. So we'll just give you 7.5 million. Let's see what you do with it. And then we may or may give you the rest. It's the same thing they're doing at the United Nations. When Africa is supposed to be
at large, over and above the ones that fund Africa, the ones that have actually, dominated the curricula. What can we do as Africa to actually come out of the United Nations? Let me start with you, ma'am.
Well, let me start by thanking my brother, Professor Lumumba. For the wonderful presentation this morning. Truly appreciate it. Also want to thank...
Sorry, can I just ask, we have music playing. Is it maybe the sound that needs to be fixed?
Thank you. Also wanted to thank Prime Minister, former Prime Minister of Kenya, for his words of wisdom. To get back to your question, do we need to be members of the United Nations? Do African nations need to be members of the United Nations? The answer is a resounding H to the no. Why is that? You must understand why United Nations was created. You must understand why IMF, World Bank, the Bretton Woods institutions were created. You must understand why the World Trade Organization was created. The United Nations, the Bretton Woods institutions, the WTO, they were institutions, among others, that were created after the European tribal wars that they call World War II. Europe, as usual, had destroyed itself, and they needed to rebuild, and they could not afford to rebuild themselves. So it is, in 3 weeks, a few countries came together and created what we now know as World Bank and IMF, as a way of figuring out how to steal from developing nations, majority being Africans, in order to fund Europe. In 1 month, a few nations came together, again organized for the purposes of rebuilding Europe from its self-destruction and implosion. So it is in 4 weeks, a few nations came up with what we know as the United Nations. That was in 1945. These institutions were never created for the benefit of the greater world. And yet, today, like fools, nations have been invited to become members of the United Nations. For what reason? African nations, an entity that was created to rebuild Europe, are asked to become members, and we are happy to be members of the United Nations. When you look at what African nations are doing when they go to the United Nations year in and year out, African nations are receiving brown envelopes, in some cases just being forced to vote on issues pertaining to other nations but never African nations. So to answer your question very bluntly and honestly, African nations need to pull out of the United Nations.
Yeah.
There is nothing there for us. We are there just to be used. We are there for them to say, when they go to the world stage, where Africans present, check. Beyond a check mark, there's nothing else for us. I would hope that one day African leaders can take a position. If you look at when they were wanting us to be represented at the UN Security Council, we want you Africans to come and be part of the UN Security Council. But like a little boy, come into the room, and by the way, there's a small boy chair for you there. Sit there and be quiet.
You go back again the next year, you go back again, and I'm asking myself, is it because you don't see that that's a small boy chair? And then what about the advisors of the so-called leaders that go there? What are they advising? It's really not rocket science, if the truth be told. So you begin to ask, is there maybe perhaps a document of some sort that the members have signed that doesn't allow them to easily move out of the United Nations?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Maybe we could try the other one? Yes.
Thank you very much. Let me start by agreeing with my sister that this institution, when it was created in 1945, all African countries, excluding Liberia and Ethiopia, were still under colonial rule. So it was created without us. The architecture is against us. That is why you have the permanent members, and the vote of any of those members can veto all other votes. And there is no provision in any of the documents of the UN, whether the Charter or the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that says we cannot leave. The reason why we don't leave is because we are disunited. Because we want to be good little boys. And it's not only the UN that they have created to divide us. The Commonwealth,
Yes.
La Francophonie, the community of Portuguese-speaking countries. The day we organize ourselves under the aegis of the African Union and we speak with a single voice, that is the day we'll recognize that we don't need some of these bodies which gained their legitimacy by having Africans playing what in English is called the gooseberry. You just sit there for it to be said that you are there. So I can't agree more that the time is now for Africa to rethink her membership in many of these organizations. But that requires unity, coherent, common policy on international relations. And the day we define ourselves, then we'll discover that the world will come for us. However you define the world.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So would you say that, in fact, how did Cold War politics actually influence the evolution of democracy in Africa?
Like our conversations earlier, what is democracy in Africa? When you look at the Cold War, I liken that situation to the environment that we are in today, where we are seeing President Trump ushering in a new era in diplomacy, ushering in a new era in politics, ushering in a new era in trade. There are many changes taking place around the world. And when you look at those changes, we must look at them with the perspective of what's in it for us. They often say, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Let's not jump on the bandwagon and follow the trends that some people might say Oh, he's doing this, we don't like it. The one I like the most is when he pulled out USAID.
Yeah.
Do you guys understand how big that is? That's a juggernaut of a relief that has just been brought to Africa. Do you guys realize that?
Did many people actually understand?
Yes.
I think that was the question there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do people understand what that seemingly benign entity was doing? That entity was not about aid to Africa. That entity was not about poor people. That entity was not about development. Like I said in one of my interviews, that entity in Africa and everywhere they have been, they were a wolf in sheep's clothing. When you see that clinic being built, when you see that school being built, when you see those social programs, take an inventory.
Yeah.
It is never where there is nothing of value. Those entities are being built in areas that are rich in minerals. So while they are running their clinic, guess what they're really doing? They're keeping an eye on that uranium in that area. Who is digging? Why are they digging? Where are they taking their diggings? It is never about the people. It is never about developing anything. It is never about building anything. If it was truly about poor people, guess what? They're having issues with homelessness in California. They're having issues with homelessness in New York City. I know communities all over the South and in the mountain parts of the United States where people still don't have electricity and running water. Hello?
Yes.
So if it's about poor people, we say to USAID, look in your backyard.
That's it.
There are plenty of them there. So let's analyze the environment we live in. Whether it is the environment post-Cold War, the environment post-European tribal wars, the environment we are in now with the geopolitics and President Trump pushing his America First agenda. I use an example of what President Trump is doing with the America First agenda. The side effects, the byproducts, though not intended for Africa, are good for Africa. And the biggest gift he gave us is by dissolving USAID. USAID is how the CIA ran some of its operations. USAID is who funded some of the people who are going against the government, people who are within the government, who are on payrolls of foreign nations, people who are undermining our progress are being funded through agencies like USAID. Your own media that is supposed to boom good news about your country are being paid through USAID to spew negative images of your country. I can go on and on and on. Nations have been destroyed through USAID, a simple wolf in sheep clothing. So let's be realistic. Let's understand our NGOs. Let's understand the environment we live in. Let's not be spoon-fed as to what's good for us. Let's use our brains. I am here to say, understand the geopolitics. Let's cherry pick what is good for us and run with it and not be allowed to believe in that which they want us to believe.
That's it. You know, just to add on to what she's saying about USAID, back in 2020, I'll take you back in 2020 when the COVID-19 pandemic, so-called pandemic, actually hit the whole world. USAID played a very vital role. I'm sure you would know that, right? Distributing vaccines. Are you aware, especially if you listen to what she's saying, that USAID was there for a purpose, to monitor? I'll give you an example of the DR Congo. There is an ending war only on a certain part of DR Congo. Do you know why? Because they have minerals and rare earths there. they can never settle that war because these so-called USAID NGOs are helping the war-torn area which they have caused. And then we have diseases that are unending. There's this disease in Congo. Ebola. Did you know that they had a cure for Ebola virus? I was shocked. Ebola virus never had a cure for years until one of their very own, God works in mysterious ways, right? One of their very own white person caught Ebola, traveled back to America, and because they were so scared, they cured him on the spot. So I said, oh, what about the ones in Congo? Don't they need the cure also? So it shows you that it's all a lie. Over 300 media houses sponsored by USAID. So bad. Now, Professor Lumumba.
Let me just make a comment on that Ebola issue.
Yes.
When I was still in Washington, there was a meeting of all NGOs around the world to come and see if Ebola could be declared an international emergency. This is after the first big outbreak. Why did these people want Ebola declared an international emergency? Because that's how the monies will be loosened around the world.
Yes.
Ebola wasn't that big of a problem. Now,
just like COVID.
Now, just like COVID.
Yeah.
Now, this is just me and a few others talking, so don't take it as gospel. But we feel that somewhere intentionally infecting people in that region so they can increase the count to justify that the numbers are increasing. They wanted Ebola declared. Run to DRC. That's where the money is, because Ebola was declared an international emergency. It's a money-making business for them, using Africans. So we need to be acutely aware of these wolves that are coming to Africa. We do not need any of them. Let them get out of Africa. Let us sink and swim.
Absolutely.
This is our Africa, our way.
That's it. Now, Professor Lumumba, you know, there's so many ways that democracy has either been a lie or it came in a different phase, but obviously we all know what exactly the purpose of it was. Talk about climate change. That's also another way of taking away people's sovereignty away. We're talking about health right now. That's also another way of taking people's sovereignty. When we had COVID, we had nations being asked to sign documents to say that no matter what happens, you'll give us your mines, you'll give us your, your sovereign property. And I thought to myself, I thought you said it was a virus. A virus is in the air. So there's so many ways that African freedoms are being taken away from the people. And one of those major ones also is just the economy. We now live in a multipolar world. There are options, I believe. It's no longer unipolar where we had America just demanding and telling us what to do. But we've also got the BRICS nations that have come up where they are offering something different. You can actually choose. Can Africa find its feet within the multipolar world? And if so, how can Africa also gain its economic sovereignty without actually falling into authoritarianism?
If Africa does not define her agenda will be defined for her. Look at what is happening now. The government of the United States of America is exporting unwanted criminals to the continent of Africa. And we are receiving them gleefully. I saw some go to Eswatini.
Yes.
Some will be exported. The criminals are not good for America, but they are good for Eswatini. And we accept it. Africa will continue to be in this space as long as she is divided into little countries. Benin, Eswatini, Lesotho, Cabo Verde, Comoros. We must speak with one voice. One would have thought that one of the ways in which Africa would do this was initially through the regional economic communities, 14 ECOWAS countries, 14 SADC countries, 8 East African Community. We thought that that would then lead to the African Union, so that when you want to talk to Africa, you talk to Africa in Addis Ababa. And the good doctor said it. Can you imagine that little Qatar calls all African leaders, and they go by private jet? And they go to Qatar in Doha, which is smaller than Lagos. The whole of Qatar is smaller than Lagos.
To sign a peace deal.
To even beyond that, to listen as to how they can have investment in the continent of Africa. But I always say that international relations is the law of the jungle. We must hunt in packs. Wolves hunt in packs. So it is our duty as the continent of Africa to define what we want. If we met in Addis Ababa, the 54 plus countries, and said, from this day henceforth, if you want to deal with us from an economic standpoint, speak to us in Addis Ababa. If you want to know our foreign policy, speak to us. If you want military collaboration, speak to us. If you want all this, speak to us.
Professor, can I come in
please?
There? You spoke about the AU earlier on, and I really understood what you were talking about, because I also attend the African Union Summit every year. 3 different years I was there. They had very interesting topics. One of them being decolonizing the curricula.
Yes.
The other, an education fit for an African. I think it was something like that. In all the occasions that I have gone to the African Union, you're saying that if you want to speak to Africa, come to Addis Ababa. Here's what I found very interesting. We are having an African Union summit, but we have the IMF there saying that we want to sponsor your think tank. I found it very disturbing. So I asked a question. I said, which organization are you from? The IMF. What are you even doing at the African Union in the first place? And then you are here, you're saying you want to sponsor a think tank, not in one country, on the African continent. What nonsense is that? Because we don't have heads to form a think tank. Another thing that was also interesting was that they say that we want to improve the curricula. Listen to this. The theme for that year was decolonizing the curricula and an education fit for an African. We had an American institute that said that they wanted to improve the African curriculum. I thought that was amazing.
Let me tell you, my sister, and I'll give you this analogy.
So in actual fact, let me just answer.
Yeah.
My question then becomes, the African leaders themselves, do they even understand really what they're doing? I think I would love to have had even the House Speaker. There was a gentleman who asked a question, how old was the other leader when he should have been here to answer that question?
Let me also add to that. When we went to I remember one summit, this was in Niger. When we were registering, I just get naughty sometimes. I just go into places I'm not expected to go. But I noticed the room we were registering, they were mostly white people. And I said, wait a minute. Here we are, they're also using facial recognition registration. So I said, I didn't find out who these white people are. So I just was acting foolish and cracking jokes. And I sat next to one white man. So what are you doing? And the man had a personal cell phone. He's taking pictures of everybody who's getting their IDs. It turned out this was a French company that was hired to register Africa's best, Africa's leaders, let me say.
And collect the data.
And they're collecting the data, including facial recognition.
Wow.
At the African Union Summit. Why? Couldn't we found an African company that could do this? But all our data, and oh, by the way, who owns that company? The wife of one of the former presidents of France. I rest my case.
Okay, Professor, let me.
You know, let me, as I answer that question, let me say how happy I am that in this conference I don't have a banner of Western organizations that have sponsored this conference.
And I think that deserves a big round of applause.
And I say that because this is how it begins. It begins this way. And when we make the decision, and allow me this analogy, which I've used elsewhere, that if the sheep knew that is the shepherd who will be eating them one by one, they would rebel against the shepherd, not the wolves. So that when he is chasing the wolves away, it is not for your benefit, it's for fattening you for another day. Until the day that we know that all these organizations fatten Africa for their benefit. My good friend, Dr. Arikana, served, albeit in the United States, as an ambassador of the AU. That organization is almost 70% funded, 90% funded by other organizations. And if our English is still correct, he or she who pays the piper calls the tune. So, but is it not possible if we were to be persuaded? If African governments were to say all African governments charge something called VAT, suppose we were to say that if it is 16% VAT, 2% will go to 1% to regional organization, 1% to the African Union. We would fund African Union. Then we would begin to prioritize what we do. What you see in Addis Ababa every year is an annual jamboree where people meet to read speeches which have been written for them. And then they wait for another. Take, for example, the year 2020 was the year of silencing of the guns. The guns are allowed.
Yes.
We are in the month of July, 4 months away. This year will have ended. This is the year of the African Union for reparations. How many of you have heard about that theme?
No, reparations.
Very few.
Have not come to Africa.
So the truth is that we must rethink. And I want to conclude with this. What Europe and America and others do is also to recruit some from within our ranks, to torpedo the good that we are doing. The fifth columnists. So we must be aware. Who do we initiate? We must make a solemn decision that we have African meetings where there is nobody but Africans. It is not going to be easy. Let's remind ourselves. It is going to be 5 steps forward, 2 backwards, but we are moving. It is intergenerational. Once you recognize that, then you'll not be worried. My good friend, Dr. Obi there, told us she's been in this space. We've been in this space. The good doctor there have been in this space. Yours is to take over the baton and run your leg. Your children and children's children, it is an intergenerational war and fight. Yeah. But it must be fought and it must be won. And I conclude by saying, when I see us, how did we get to know each other? How did I get to know all this? We are discovering ourselves. So the journey is on, but there are potholes along the way. But we must move on. And move on, we will.
Okay, you want to add on? All right.
I need to share a personal experience to emphasize the point he just made. I was at an African Union Peace and Security meeting where we are supposed to be discussing peace and security issues on the continent. So when I walked into the room, I thought to myself, wait a minute, we're talking about peace and security in Africa. What are these people doing here? And so I waited for a chance to sneak in. So I raised my question, and I wanted to know if we're discussing issues to do with peace and security in Africa. I turned around and I looked at all of them and I said, why are they here? Are we invited to European peace and security meetings.
Absolutely not.
The sister who was moderating the session got so mad at me, she called for a break. And during the break, she had the audacity to come to me and accuse me of messing up her session. There. Lies our problem. And the sister happened to be working for the United Nations as a country representative in Kenya. Thank you.
The fact that we are waking up to this is also important. Now, I'm just going to do one last round of questions to my panelists. But practically, I know we could discuss at length what needs to happen, you know, as Africans, what can we do? I think a call to action for us to actually practicalize what is going on right now. Can I ask this? The leaders that we have within the African continent, I heard one of the speakers saying that we have leaders that don't want to even cede power. They have been there for years as though we don't have other young people that we can trade. Would you say that these leaders are a problem? And if so, how are we going to deal with it? Because it comes to the question of how have the so-called democratic elections actually have affected the democracy of Africa at large? That's question one. And then question two, either of you can answer any of it, is that as we have discussed this and we have spoken about it, do we need at all to have a legal binding constitution of some sort, or can we re-amend existing constitutions legally to help Africa move forward? Or can we just ignore that and start afresh? This in reference to what is happening in the Sahel region. The president, I don't know whether I should call him president, of Burkina Faso was asked to come to Washington. He said he was too busy serving the people of Burkina Faso, that being in Washington meant nothing. In just 2 years of also being called a junta government, which I questioned the other time, I said, who came up with the phrase junta government in the first place? How is it junta when the people of Niger are rejoicing? The people of Burkina Faso, they actually want to work with their president. 2 years of this so-called Sahel region trio, what they have done is what you have been talking about for years. They did it in 2 years. Infrastructure, factories, jobs. I learned just recently that they were on school holidays in Burkina Faso. The young people didn't want to go on holiday. They went to paint and clean streets in support of their leader. So that's why I was saying that. Does it take rocket science for us to change it? You said something very profound, Professor, that the African Union has literally become a talk shop. Sometimes it's very annoying. Honestly, I attend all the time. I'm asking the same questions every year. There are no answers. And these are policymakers of an African Union. Now, we need to practicalize this. Which way forward from here? How do we deal with these so-called leaders and electoral systems? I'm not saying that everybody then should become a so-called coup government. Absolutely not. But I'm saying, how do we serve the people in practicality? Thank you.
Let me start with let me repeat, and I'll say this and I'll say it repeatedly. That is a toothless bulldog. And until this dog is given teeth, it will continue to be a toothless bulldog. Some of you may not realize, African Union doesn't have sovereignty. Membership in the African Union is optional. Any leader can walk out at any time, no consequences. African Union chair, current African Union president, they can't tell any country to do anything. So if the African leaders are truly serious to this toothless bulldog, they must give it teeth. They must give African Union some sort of sovereignty of some sort to where they can actually mandate that certain things be done within the continent.
They need to take out Antonio Guterres and stop him from attending those meetings. It could be a starting point.
In fact, none of them need to attend the African Union Summit. This is about Africans discussing African issues, our continental agenda, coming up with a true common African position that can be implemented with a pathway. But to talk about common African position that cannot be implemented, even the AFCFTA, try building a highway connecting the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean. Do you know what blocks that railway will go through as it goes? Because we are not together. Prime Minister spoke about the railway network. When you see it, it's beautiful. The things that can be done with these railway lines. But what we end up doing is we go to sleep and we dream about those railway lines. And it ends there. Empowering the African Union and give it teeth is what the leaders should do if they mean business. But they don't.
Okay, ma'am.
So let's agree on that.
I'm going to have to ask Professor Lumumba to round off as well.
Thank you very much. I agree with you completely. One of the things that is being done from a very practical standpoint, I know there is now a movement which is operating under the African People's Union. And what it wants to do is to bring pressure to bear on Pan-African institutions to begin to take positive action. It is not going to be easy. There is going to be pushback. In the intervening period is to identify what I call coalitions of the willing and start with those coalitions of the willing with a view to planting the seed and watering that seed. It is not going to be easy. I know several years ago I talked to one head of state in East Africa, and after that conversation there is something that was called the fast tracking of East African Federation. Yes. It also was dead on arrival. So we'll do 10 things and we'll succeed on the 10th one. So don't be tired. Don't be tired of asking these questions. I was telling my wife just a few minutes ago that I write to letters, I write to president, and some people ask me, don't you get tired? And I said, I consider myself to be like Paul in the Bible. Did you see the reply of the Galatians to Paul?
Yes.
There isn't. So I keep on writing because that is the role that I play. And when you look at it from that point, you never tire. Of course, as my good friend Madame Obi said, sometimes you feel that it is not worth it. That is when you re-energize yourself. That is when I send Arikana a message. That is when she sends me a message. That is when I send Okorie a message and others within the room. It can be done.
Thank you. Maybe just one question. Yes. Yes, let's hear the solution. Solutions is what we're looking for, right?
Well, since we have this juggernaut, useless, toothless bulldog that is called the African Union, guess what, guys? We have the Sahel nations. Why can't we start that which we desire to see? A single currency, a single military, a network of railways. Let's take all those things that are in the African Union agenda that cannot be implemented because they are documents sitting in a drawer. Let's implement them in the Sahel nation. We start with 3 African nations. Before you know it, we have a United States of Africa.
Yay, wonderful. One question, I think. Am I allowed 1 or 2 questions? 2 questions. So we do male and female, right? Okay, please can we have the roving mic go around? We've got hands here, we've got hands here. Wow, this is very interesting. We've got a lady here, we've got another lady here. So can we maybe start with this one? In the front row. Sorry, sir. In the front row, yeah, you can go. And then we have... Wow. We have this gentleman here in the hat.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. I am so delighted to be in this hall today. and I will be doing myself a disservice to live here without speaking. I want to first of all appreciate this hall. All my life I have worked in the civil society space. I came from Plateau State, where my son, Ambassador Chris, resides. And we have never, ever had a meeting in a room without the white color. And today is the first day. Please, can we give ourselves a round of applause? That is to show that the voices of people like Professor Lumumba, whom I appreciate daily in my life, and I have the privilege of meeting him today, is not in vain. It means that we have a pool of African young people whom we have worked with and told that the time is now for you to occupy the space. You are ready to do that. Not minding the answer saga that wanted to stop you. I want on that note to say that we are really talking and talking. I was in African Union building and I was very glad. And I say, oh, this is the first time that my continent is doing a great thing by building a magnificent building for Africa. And somebody said, Justina, stop.
Built by the Chinese.
This building was not given by Africans. It was donated to us by Chinese. Yeah. That means what Her Royal Highness and the Prof has said. I saw myself that we don't have secrets. They instituted every cable in that building.
Yes.
It means that every discussions that goes on, despite the fact that the half of the houses, the half of the building are whites. Every of our communications, there are gadgets there that gets back to every part of the world. Who has done this to us? Who has bewitched Africa? How do we move from this step to another step? How do we reclaim our continent? I was in Niger. I'm doing a project in Niger since after the coup d'etat, just to make sure, just like my mentor, Mrs. Enobi, said, our women all over the world, wherever we go, women are represented. And we wanted to make sure that women are fine. And at the airport, I was arrested. And I was very happy. I told them that this is why I'm here. Because I am the womb of Africa. And as a womb of Africa, I will stand my feet to make sure that I raise my voice. That at the end of the day, no matter what our leaders have done, if our leaders, because they were telling me that our leaders in Nigeria did not support them. And I said, I am not here to represent the voices of the leaders. I am here to represent the voices of the womb of Africa.
Ma'am, can we
and
just
because
give you
of that,
10 more seconds?
Africa must stand firm.
10 more
What
seconds.
am I trying to arrive at?
Yes.
I am trying to arrive at the point that except we do what Professor Lumumba have said, speaking in one voice, getting united, and I am very happy that the people of Sahel, which is Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, are saying, as far as they are concerned, democracy is about putting food in their table. And I want to say, except all the African leaders will speak with that one voice, we will sit here and start over again. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
You. We have a gentleman there with a question.
Thank you very much. I must be most grateful to the organizer, Ambassador Chris Iyama, for this opportunity, and members of panel. Thank you so much, Prof, for those insights, and Madam, for what you have shared. I get very challenged. Now, first and foremost, I work among the students. I'm a lecturer for students, and I'm inspired to cause a change among students. But we meet some structural challenges and some behavioral challenges. Now, I'm of the opinion, believing in the ideals of character, that if Africa must change and if Africa must go in the hands of young people. Okay, thank you. Apologies, sir. if Africa must be led by young people, there must be some evidence of strong character, because of what we have suffered in the past. And like was rightly opined, some of the people who we, in quotes, accuse of this wrong leadership were once in their youth. And so I'm asking this question because of the changes that we need to make in our democracy and the inclusion of young people particularly. So some of the problems that I've seen are that we have these issues among students, particularly of internet fraud, corruption at the most little levels. And so I'm asking that in the bid to unite and come together to build something new, what are we going to do in terms of policy and some kind of carefulness to be sure that some of the things that ate up the system before in terms of character deficits, because even with us trading with Europe, we still have issues with fraud, trust, etc. So how are we going to have trust now? Let's assume we all buy the idea, we come together. How are we going to have trust? How are we going to build integrity within the systems? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We can answer.
For me, if you look at the issues that we're struggling with, issues that are so common sense and non-issue, for example, just the educational system. I often joke about the Minister of Roads, whose road to his own house is full of potholes. The minister is so used to potholes that he doesn't see anything wrong with that. One phone call and all those potholes to his house could be fixed. Because he just kind of gotten used to it, he no longer sees it as a problem. The ministers of finance who are fully aware of what is being done to us by World Bank and IMF. They go to the World Bank twice a year and they never challenge World Bank or simply say, we are not coming because of what you're doing to us. I'm saying our inability to address those issues that are so basic. One meeting in Parliament and it's done. Why are we incapable of doing that? It goes down to the mind. We were destroyed where it matters the most. Each and every one of us must look at image in the mirror. Are you colonized? Why do you think the way you do? Do you understand the systems, the processes that were put in place to colonize you, to twist your mind? Something as simple as the color of your skin. I like to say we should refuse to be called black. Because before they came, we were not called black. But they used the color black and white. White representing good, black representing bad. They said the devil is black, the angels are white, and we are white like the angels. Have you ever seen a person who looks like this? It's a lie, but we accepted it. We are not black. But then we believe that automatically anything we do is unacceptable. It was a conditioning process, much like they did to the slaves. They conditioned us to not respect that which we do. A white man can come in and tell the Minister of Education to change the educational system to a Pan-African one. It will be done.
Yes.
We are waiting for voices that are not like us, but the bottom line is we were defeated where it matters the most. Let's accept that we are colonized and that we have a disease, and that this disease, we are not only sick in a doctor's office, we are not only sick in a hospital ward, we are sick in the intensive care, and we need intensive healing.
Okay, Professor?
Thank you very much. I think let's be very practical. People don't talk about what they are doing because we must ask ourselves, what are we doing? Dr. Arikana has not told you. In her own way, she has an organization which is called ADDI, which is organizing around the continent and around the world. Those are practical things. In 2 weeks' time, I'll be celebrating 30 years since my foundation was founded. We are now present in 47 African countries, including Nigeria. We have never received a single cent from any European donor organization. We said no. Out of our little income, that is what we contribute. And you will be amazed at what young people are doing. Just give you 3 of them who are active in the continent of Africa. One of them from the Gambia now has a cosmetic company with an outlet in Banjul, in Dhaka, and in Lagos. The other one is now one of the leading Kiswahili speakers in Tanzania. And as I speak, he's just been sent by his party to South Africa to empower young people. The other one is a great Ghanaian YouTuber, Wodemeyer, who travels around the world. And there was one who have just sent him, Aliu Suleiman from Kaduna. We, in our all small ways, are doing things. Ask yourself, what are you doing? And as I conclude, what are we doing? We are also talking to people who are in positions of leadership. 2 years ago, I talked to the president of Malawi and I told him, I'm bringing 53 Africans as investors. They will not have billions from China. What did he do? We went there. As I speak to you now, one of the people I took there, a young girl who is below 35, is building what will be a multi-billion kwacha company. And as I speak to you now, out of that initiative, in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, will be commissioned one of the largest organic fertilizer companies in Ethiopia. So we just don't talk. In addition to the talk, we are wedding our words with our actions, and we are making a contribution. Ask yourself today, what contribution are you making? Because assume each one of us were to make some contribution, and then we combine our efforts. Who will not listen to us? Who? Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. Now, as I conclude also, I want to say something. Because, usually when you have discussions like this, people tend to get emotional. Racism is a thing that was planted in us so that we could hate each other. Do you understand? We've only got one race. That is God's race. However, we have very, very dubious ones. Those are the global elites, the deep staters that always try to enslave people, like Honorable was saying here, that it's a conditioning of the mind. So now don't go out and say, this person is white, so I don't like them. Please don't do that, okay? Don't do that. We have certain that always disturb our peace in Africa, and those are the ones that we're pointing out to. In addition, I also want to say something. Let's learn to pray for our nations. Because if we don't pray for our nations, we will lack wisdom on how to deal with the situations that are happening in our nations. If you read the Bible, it will tell you that the Roman Empire was completely destroyed. Do you know why? We had apostles that were praying. Politics is also there in the Bible. So we need to have the right wisdom, all this education that we're receiving, so that it doesn't go to waste. Right? We're going to do that. And then I also want to challenge the organizers of this amazing conference. Could you then help us start the so-called think tank in Africa? Because I believe you're well connected to different institutions and organizations within the African continent. We've got very intelligent people here. We could have that think tank. What do you think? That is not sponsored by the United States or European Union or something like that. Let me tell you, Europe is well spent. There's absolutely nothing. We have the rare earths that they are busy speaking about between Washington and Ukraine, signing deals. We are the owners of it. So we'll take charge. Thank you so much to my panelists. I am so honored to be sitting with these great people. It's so amazing. Thank you so much. And to a lovely audience, thank you so much for being here today. God bless you.
Please, I want you to appreciate them more. Please. Thank you.